All right, this muscle dissection is on the abdominal muscles. In order to find the abdominal muscles, first you have to have completely freed up the latissimus dorsi. So this is the latissimus dorsi. It's going to be connected in the front here to the xiphi humerales. And then underneath the latissimus dorsi, the first abdominal muscle that we're going to find is the external oblique. If you look at the cat, you should be able to see where the external oblique is different from the muscle right down the middle. The muscle right down the middle is the rectus abdominis. It's covered with a fairly thick layer of fascia. And in the very center of the rectus abdominis is a white line, which is called the linea alba. So all of this here is rectus abdominis. And we are going to peel up the very thin external oblique. So the best way to do this is to make a small incision kind of down here, and then take your probe, and then when you take your probe you should be able to get through just the fascia material. Okay, so kind of like when we were skinning, you're going to make a pathway for yourself, and then take your scissors and cut through just the fascia material as you're lifting this up here, following the line of the muscle, but just cutting through the fascia, and you're going to go down the side here like this. Alright, after you do that, you should be able to start separating this very thin layer of muscle by kind of pulling it back and then just making a very light cut with your scalpel, as you're just cutting through this very, very light fascia material. You can probably use your hand to do a fair amount of this. You're going to go up here as far as the xiphi humerales, which is right here, and then separate the external oblique and lay it down. All right, when you get done with that, you're going to find there are two other layers of muscles here. The next layer of muscle is the internal oblique, and the internal oblique is right here in this area. And then there's also the muscle which is the transverse abdominis. So to find that, you'll see a line right here. This is the line for the rectus abdominis. And so if we lift up the rectus abdominis, deep to the rectus abdominis is going to be the transverse abdominis. So you don't want to cut very deep here. And you're going to lift this up and then cut through the fat material and the fascia. And as you're going through here, where you can see my black glove, that's going to be where you're going to cut. Just at the natural separation line here. And you want to go down a fairly lengthy area here. This muscle underneath here, you can see actually here's where just the membrane on the abdominal cavity is. But this layer of muscle right here is the transverse abdominis. This is the rectus abdominis right here. And then the linea alba separates it from the other side. Then the other muscle that you're going to have here, and the rectus abdominis, if you can peel back some of this fascia material, the rectus abdominis actually goes over here and goes underneath the external oblique. It's very difficult to separate it there. If you want to give it a try, you can, but the internal obliques are very, very, very thin, and if you want to try and make a little separation there, you can. But just know that there are 3 layers of muscles here. The external oblique, which we separated, the transverse abdominis, which is underneath the rectus abdominis here, and then you have the internal obliques, which is also covering part of the transverse abdominis, because the transverse abdominis starts right here, and then it goes underneath the internal obliques for a little ways, and you can see where the line of the internal obliques is coming in here. But it's a very difficult separation. If you're lucky enough to have one of those really fat cats, you might be able to do a nice separation here of the internal oblique from the transverse abdominis. Otherwise, I'll be satisfied if you have the transverse abdominis under the rectus abdominis. So that's it for the abdominal muscles.